Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure now to shortly introduce Alvin Rosenfeld, our keynote speaker. Alvin holds the Irving Glaser Chair in Jewish Studies at Indiana University in Bloomington, and he's the director of the Institute for the Study of Contemporary Antisemitism at Indiana. His publications on topics of modern history are indeed countless, but there are two main issues which have more or less crystallized from the others. And this is, on one side, Holocaust and Holocaust historiography, on the other side, anti-Semitism. Among his recent books, I just want to mention a few. Research into Antisemitism, Global Perspectives, for example, which appeared at Indiana University Press at 2013, which he edited. Then the monograph, The End of the Holocaust, in 2011, which appeared in English, German, Hebrew, Hungarian, and Polish editions. And the German edition, I remember, was hotly discussed a couple of years ago. And just two examples of series of well-perceived extended conference volumes dealing with new forms of anti-Semitism that he edited. For example, Deciphering the New Anti-Semitism, Indiana 2015, and Anti-Zionism and Anti-Semitism, Indiana 2018. Alvin is well known as a scholar ready for battle, and he doesn't mince matters. For example, his essay, Progressive Jewish Thought and the New Anti-Semitism, caused a lot of pros and cons also here in Germany, and I think this was very good also for the inner Jewish debates. Finally, I want to mention in April 2019, congratulations, Alvin Rosenfeld did receive the IU President's Medal for Excellence, probably for working 5 decades at the IU. And yes, today Alvin is presenting the keynote of this symposium, talking on anti-Semitism in today's America, a radical change for Jewish communities, ? Alvin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Olaf. Thank you, Julius, Kim, Andrea, and everyone else. To see so many people here on a Sunday where the temperatures are going to go up and up and up is especially gratifying. The subject is a serious one, a demanding one. We'll do our best over the course of the day to clarify it at its depth. There will be time, I'm certain, for lots of discussion with all of you. With no further ado, however, I want to go immediately to my own topic. Is my voice carrying okay, by the way? Yes? Okay. Which deals with anti-Semitism in today's America. Since the turn of the millennium, an escalating anti-Semitism has become a disturbing fact of life for Jews in numerous countries. But until recently, most American Jews have felt immune to it. That is no longer so, for they face a level of hostility that most have never experienced before. It has set their nerves on edge and forced them to think anew about the security of their personal and community lives today and threats they may face tomorrow. Some of these threats are physical and involve an alarming increase in violence against Jews and Jewish institutions. Others are ideological and political in nature and call into question the patriotism and loyalties of American Jews. Taken together, they present new and unsettling challenges. Consider the following. On October the 27th, 2018, Robert Bowers, previously unknown, stormed into Pittsburgh's Tree of Life Synagogue and shot 17 people who had gathered for Shabbat prayers. Guns blazing, he reportedly shouted, "All Jews must die," as he carried out his killing spree. 11 people, most of them elderly, were murdered on that day. It was the deadliest attack on Jews in American history. Exactly 6 months later to the day, on April the 27th, 2019, John Ernest, also previously unknown, followed Robert Bowers' example and entered the Chabad synagogue in Poway, California, near San Diego, with a semi-automatic rifle. Shouting, "Jews are ruining the world," he killed one person and wounded 3 others, including the rabbi. After the shooting, he declared, and I quote his words, "I feel no remorse. I only wish I had killed more. I am honored to be the one to send these vile anti-humans into the pit of fire where they shall remain for eternity." Let me tell you what is known as of now about these 2 men, and also situate their crimes within the broader context of today's anti-Semitism in the United States. Robert Bowers is 46 years old and had no previous criminal record. There was literally nothing in his past that indicated he was about to become a mass murderer. He lived by himself in a modest rented apartment in Pittsburgh and worked as a truck driver. Apart from being a loner, there are 2 additional salient facts for you to know. He had 21 guns registered in his name, 4 of which he took with him into the Tree of Life synagogue on the morning of October the 27th. And 2, he evidently spent a great deal of his time on social media, in particular on an extremist website called Gab, G-A-B, favored by people on the far right, including white nationalists, neo-Nazis, and anti-Semites. Postings he would have found on Gab, and also some that he himself contributed, portray Jews as being the enemy of white people, that's a quote, and claim that they are actively at war against white people, also quoted. In some of his postings, Bowers seemed especially worked up over immigrants and refugees, whom he labeled invaders and saw as a threat to America's majority white population. Closely allied with these invaders in his mind were the Jews, whom he referred to, his words, as the children of Satan. Seen as an evil people, the Jews were helping the invaders invade. In one of his postings, he writes, and again I quote him, "It is the filthy, evil Jews bringing the filthy, evil Muslims into the country. Stop the kikes," he added, "and then worry about the Muslims." Bowers seemed especially agitated by the work of HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, originally established in 1881 to aid Jewish refugees fleeing pogroms in Eastern Europe. In more recent years, HIAS has widened its scope to assist in the resettlement of a range of other refugees. In the work of this relatively small agency, Bowers saw the wicked hand of the Jews, and he decided to cut it off. His very last posting on Gab reads as follows, again I quote his words, "HIAS likes to bring invaders that kill our people. I can't sit by and watch my people get slaughtered. Screw your optics, I'm going in." With slaughter in his mind, in he went, entering the lobby of the synagogue shortly before 10 a.m. on that Shabbat morning. Calling out, "All Jews must die," he gunned down a group of elderly Jewish worshippers whom he saw as somehow a threat to white people, his people. Apprehended by policemen who had rushed to the scene, Bowers told one of the arresting officers, I quote his words again, "The Jews are committing genocide on my people. I just want to kill Jews." News of his bloody crime came as a shock to most people, but not to all. John Ernest credited Bowers for inspiring him to kill Jews in the Poway Chabad synagogue. Until he carried out his deadly shooting, Ernest would have seemed an unlikely person to plan such a crime. Only 19 years old, he comes from a stable family. His father is a science teacher. He's been a nursing student. He claims to have many good friends. He's played piano seriously for many years, and he regularly attends his parents' church. For 18 months prior to the shooting, however, he also led an active life on the internet, and he was an avid poster on 8chan's pole board, a gathering site for white nationalists, anti-Semites, and neo-Nazis. From Ernest's 4,300 open letter or manifesto, which he posted just before the Poway shootings, one learns that he saw himself as a martyr prepared to sacrifice himself on behalf of what he called his race, his people, and in defense of Christianity. White Christians, he was convinced, were under attack by Jews, whom he charged with responsibility for the death of Jesus and the murder of many Christian saints. Addressing himself to my brothers in Christ, he claimed Jews were, his words, inspired by demons and Satan, and will attempt to corrupt your soul with sin and perversion. In addition, his words again, Jews fund politicians and organizations who use mass immigration to displace the European race living in the United States. An ardent white supremacist, he's sure, I quote him again, that there are brave white men alive who have the willpower and the courage it takes to say, and forgive the following vulgarity, these are his words, not mine, "Fuck my life, I'm willing to sacrifice everything for the benefits of my race." In this spirit, he writes that he's personally prepared to willingly sacrifice my future for the sake of my people, our people. I would die 1,000 times over to prevent the doomed fate that the Jews have planned for my race. As these and similar sentiments reveal, his thinking combines traditional Christian anti-Semitism and contemporary white nationalism. This hybrid of two deeply hostile anti-Jewish ideologies has now become a familiar presence, I'm sorry to say, on the American far right, where Nazi flags sometimes mingle with large handheld crucifixes in angry street demonstrations. Both were on display, for instance, at a Holocaust Remembrance Day event in May in a small town in Arkansas, when white supremacist protesters carrying Nazi flags, crosses, and pictures of Jesus, and signs saying, "The Holocaust never happened, but it should have," interrupted the event. Such activities are fed by several sources, including a small but passionate Christian identity movement that dates back to the 19th century and today is undergoing something of a revival on the populist and nativist right, where it combines white aspirations for racial purity with a return of familiar medieval Christian accusations against the Jews. Both Robert Bowers and John Earnest were motivated by such thinking, which is abundantly available on the internet sites that they frequented, and that almost certainly is having an influence on others. Like Robert Bowers and John Earnest, many who frequent these websites are obsessed with the notion that Jews are an evil, threatening, conspiratorial people. They are angry, and they are armed in America's pervasive gun culture. For instance, one day after the Pittsburgh killings, a 30-year-old white nationalist named Jeffrey Clark, also previously unknown, wrote on Gab, I quote his words, that the fucking Jews that got shot by the hero Robert Bowers were all active supporters of pedophilia, and every last Jew deserved exactly what happened to them and so much worse. He also wrote that the synagogue shootings were merely, his words, a dry run for things still to come. Fortunately, family members who knew that Clark owned a gun and a high-capacity magazine and were worried about what he might do turned him into the police. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip a few pages that would present other examples of people like this, and I'll just ask you to please take me at my word that they exist, and their numbers seem to be multiplying. In May of this year, there were attempted attacks against 2 synagogues in Boston and 1 synagogue in Chicago. Earlier, there had been attacks against synagogues in Miami, Los Angeles, and other American cities. While underreported, physical attacks on religious Jews in Brooklyn and elsewhere have now become common occurrences. The same is true of the harassment of Jewish children in certain schools and the placement of swastikas and other anti-Semitic graffiti on synagogues, Jewish homes, schools, and cemeteries. Recorded hate crimes in a number of American cities have gone up, and authorities acknowledge that most of these have been directed against Jews. You can look up the numbers. They're going way up. In New York City alone, there was an increase of 83% last year. What does all of this tell us? Until recently, it's been commonly believed that America is a different country from countries in Europe for being largely free of ongoing serious anti-Jewish hostility. The truth is, most American Jews continue to go about their daily lives without encountering any overt antagonism. They know they enjoy full civil and political rights like everyone else. They have not been subjected ever to federally imposed restrictive legislation that singles out Jews, and they've never faced government-inspired pogroms or any other form of government-sanctioned mass violence, as their European ancestors certainly did. American Jews, for the most part, have long felt generally accepted, and the great majority are fully integrated in virtually all strata of American life. When it comes to having to contend with anti-Semitism, then, America, in comparison to Europe and parts of the Muslim world, has until now looked better. And over the past half-century or more, most Jews have felt secure and at home in their country. At the same time, as we all know, the United States has hardly been free of social anti-Semitism. It's part of the country's history, and in earlier decades, American Jews certainly experienced varying degrees of discrimination and exclusion in employment, residential neighborhoods, universities, resorts, social clubs, and even hospitals. A hard-edged anti-Semitism, at its most extreme reflecting Nazi views, was at times a part of the prominent part of the public discourse of the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. And during these years, Jews were frequently accused of disloyalty, economic profiteering, and warmongering. Acts of aggression against individual Jews and Jewish institutions have episodically also occurred over the years, and especially during the early years of the civil rights movement, there were multiple bombings of Jewish synagogues and schools. Few Jews of the present generation in America, however, know very much about these past incidents. And while they are aware of anti-Semitic attacks occurring in European countries, they never expected to see such violence occurring on American soil. Nor have they been prepared to see certain recent and troubling developments in American social and political life. For instance, at a large rally in Washington, D.C., just a few weeks after President Trump was elected in 2016, a group of his supporters assembled at the Reagan Building to celebrate what they saw as a victory for their cause. They were addressed by Richard Spencer, a prominent white nationalist who called out, these are his words, "Hail Trump, hail our people, hail victory." These words, echoing familiar Nazi chants, were greeted by some in the crowd with stiff-armed salutes right out of the Hitler period. Even more startling were subsequent displays of white supremacist and anti-Semitic fervor, culminating in the infamous rally of neo-Nazis, Klansmen, and others belonging to the hardcore right in Charlottesville, Virginia on August the 12th, 2017. Posters that circulated in advance of that rally urged people to come to Charlottesville to unite the right, their words, and end Jewish influence in America, also quoted. Many, about 500 or so, responded enthusiastically and joined in a much publicized street demonstration at which the words, "Jews will not replace us," were repeatedly shouted out. Some of the placards that people held aloft at that rally declared that Jews were the children of Satan, an accusation that one is finding more and more often. One looked on with a deepening sense of dismay, especially considering that these events might not be aberrant happenings, but could herald the revival of re-energized passions on the extreme right. Such feelings and the politics they give rise to have long existed in America within discredited groups, but they've not, until more recent times, been shown closer to the mainstream. What then explains the surprising appearance these past couple of years of swastika flags, Nazi slogans, and anti-Semitic chants in the halls and streets of American cities? Numerous factors, for sure, are involved. It's not a simple matter. But one is the influence of an amorphous, previously obscure movement, the alt-right, as it's referred to, most of whose active life until recently took place on the internet and not in the public square. The alt-right resists easy definition, but its main ideological thrust is populist and nativist, and its most radical elements include vehement white supremacy and a rabid anti-Semitism. Some of the alt-right's members call for the end of the United States. They regard their words as a Zionist-occupied government. They aim to either replace this version of America, which they no longer regard as their country, or carve out of it a racially pure, white ethno-state. In the alt-right mind, Jews are seen as the absolute other, the driving force of white dispossession. They are a different, unassimilable enemy race, and they must be exposed, defeated, and ultimately eliminated. The Pittsburgh and Poway synagogue killers saw themselves as part of this movement. They parroted its political slogans, and they felt called upon to act upon them. The result was the murder of a dozen innocent Jews and the wounding of several others. The number of people in America who identify with hard-right groups is probably at the moment still very small, and until recently, their influence has been negligible. But they do feel re-energized, and they believe they can now step out of the shadows and proudly make their case to the American public. And here I want to skip some material. We can talk about it in common if you want during the discussion, involving attitudes towards America's current president, some of his own attitudes and rhetoric, and the like. All I can tell you right now in the interest of time is that America is in an overwrought phase of social, political, and ideological tumult in which extreme views of many kinds have come prominently to the fore. The Pittsburgh and Poway synagogue shootings are horrific examples of the kind of hatred that can surface in such a time. The killings of Jews at prayer were unexpected, but the climate out of which they come shows no signs of calming down, so it's unlikely that these will be the last of such killings. Also unexpected and similarly unnerving is the political expression of anti-Semitism that surfaced on both the right and the left in the country's 2018 midterm elections. Among other troubling developments, a number of extreme far right-wing figures ran for local, state, and national office. The good news is not a single one of them prevailed. They all lost. The bad news, and again, I can give you the details during the discussion if you wish, that they received a fairly sizable support in their various districts and altogether pulled in something like 2 million votes. I can detail that for you by names and numbers should you wish. It's an ominous development that bears watching. If it becomes commonplace for openly racist, neo-Nazi, and anti-Semitic figures to run for political office in America in still larger numbers and pull in hundreds of thousands of votes, we will have reached a new low in American public life. Of at least equal, if not greater, concern was the victory in the 2018 elections of political figures on the so-called progressive left who now have seats in the United States Congress and have openly voiced passionately hostile views. Prominent among them were Representatives Ilhan Omar of Minnesota and Rashida Tlaib of Michigan. Both have expressed public support for BDS. You'll be hearing more about BDS from Tammy Rossman-Benjamin and others a bit later. And for weakening America's traditionally strong ties to Israel. Tlaib, in fact, is on record calling for the dissolution of the Jewish state and its replacement by a single binational state. Both have accused Israel advocates of Congress of dual loyalty, with Omar claiming that it's Jewish money and only Jewish money that accounts for congressional support for Israel. Beyond the so-called bribes that Jews allegedly use to win political favor, including what she calls, her words, allegiance to a foreign country, Omar also has attributed something like magic powers to the Jews, tweeting, her words, that Israel has hypnotized the world. May Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel. That's new for us to hear by a person in the United States Congress. Such views are disturbingly familiar to anyone acquainted with traditional anti-Semitic accusations against Jews. For them to be voiced by people elected to serve in the United States Congress, however, is startling, especially when they seem calculated to shift the political discussion in ways that can have new and damaging political implications. For these reasons, an attempt was made to condemn Omar's remarks through the introduction of a congressional resolution denouncing anti-Semitism. But Omar's allies within the Democratic Party fought against doing so, and in the end passed a diluted and rather meaningless resolution condemning virtually every form of prejudice and racism under the sun. In the view of many commentators at the time, this was a battle that Omar won and that those who opposed the encroachment of anti-Semitism into American politics lost. I should say more recently, a better resolution is being introduced in the United States Senate. I've been traveling for a few weeks and I'm not as close to that as I wish I were, but that's a more hopeful development. More recently, just the other day, in fact, still another congressperson, this one, the famous Octavia Cortez from New York, denounced the United States as a fascist country, her words, again, not words familiar in the mouths of people in the United States Congress. And as you know, she claims that America is building nothing less than concentration camps, again, her words, on the country's southern border. I'll close in just a minute with a question that we can discuss in common. What can one do against these developments? Anti-Jewish hostility, as Julius Schoeps announced and accurately described in his introductory remarks, has been around for a long time, and it's confronted Jews with far more lethal threats than those facing American Jews today. At the same time, recent events in the United States are certainly having a sobering effect on many Jews who are beginning to see that their country really is no longer immune to anti-Semitism and is not different than any other country. In the face of these developments, one can observe two trends. On the one hand, American Jews will do what they can to continue to lead normal lives indistinguishable from the lives of other Americans. That is as it should be. And yet recognizing that they are more vulnerable than was previously thought. Jews in the United States are likely to follow the example of European Jews and make extra efforts to secure their synagogues, schools, community centers, and other institutions. For us, that's new. In my own town, but at synagogues in every town across America, people are rethinking their security needs. Synagogues in America, until recently, have had what's called an open door policy. Anyone can come in and pray with people praying. That's beginning to change now to a locked door or closed door policy with a lot of security present. I went to synagogue at the Oranienburger Strasse synagogue just on Shabbat yesterday. I had been there before, so I knew it was necessary to register ahead of time and pass through a police guard. Everything went fine. We've not had that in America, but we're beginning to get it now in America. In the aftermath of the murders that I mentioned to you and the fear of others still to come, security measures of the kind I just noted to you are going to increase. They're already increasing. Regrettably, but also necessarily, living more defensively will come to define the new normal of American Jewish life. I say regrettably because, as a friend of mine recently put it, if you need an armed guard at your synagogue to exercise your freedom of religion, you don't have freedom of religion. And he's right about that. And I say necessarily because the threats that I've brought to your attention are unlikely to diminish anytime soon. Jews have proven to be a resilient people over a long period of time and in much more perilous circumstances. So one expects that American Jews will find ways to cope with the problems I've noted to you. Just how quickly and successfully they will do so, however, and what new challenges await them, all of that remains to be seen. Thank you.